there's a couple of fundamental things about follow through and overlapping action that I have observed. One is that we in this new era of our work is that we're going to introduce rotations. So we're gonna take an object and pivot at a certain point, and then rotate that object, and the quality of its rotations and the timing of its rotations is going to be the follow through and overlapping action. So this leads us into and points us towards bodies, figures, legs and arms, spines, necks and heads and fingers and toes. So all of those body parts are built on rotations, right? So there's, in the human figure, there's, right, I'll just do a stick figure here, right? So you got your hip, and the hip is what's moving forward. The hip is what brings us, and we throw the hip forward. Well, if we have, the knee and the foot, all of this is rotation. All of this stuff is rotating back and forth, from the hip rotating back and forth, and there's only about 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 4 positions on the human body, 5, that are translating. So up to this point, we've been, here's a ball, and we move the ball, and the ball travels around the scene. So we're translating this object. Well, there's only 5 points on the human body that I can definitely say are translating. One is the hip, the other 2 are the heel, and then the other 2 are the hands. And everything else is just following along. In fact, I could even take away the hands and say the hands aren't even translating. They're simply responding to the spine, they're responding to the arm, which is responding to the spine, and shoulder, which is responding to the hip. And the hip is what's moving forward. So where we're headed is having this ball with a tail, and we're looking to animate the translation, if you will, the translation of the ball, and then we have the rotation of these individual pivot points. So I have a pivot point here. I have a pivot point here. I got a pivot point here, and then this thing is translating. Now, this is entirely into the language of 3D animation, but 3D animation is just borrowing from what's happening in the real world, and ultimately 2D animation is just observing what's happening in the real world. So I think it's beneficial to have this kind of conversation and look at it and say, this is moving around, but not rotating. And then this is my elbow rotating, and here's my elbow moving, but my elbow moving is actually the result of my shoulder rotating. So it's just a series of rotations all the way down the body. And there's usually something at the beginning or at the core of the movement of the character that's driving the whole thing forward. And in this case, it's going to be our hips, or in the case of full body character, it's going to be our spine. So we're just throwing our whole torso forward and catching ourselves with our feet. So the follow through and overlapping action section has these micro lessons that help to set up our mind to think about this from the this sort of analytical perspective, so that we're not walking in blind and just thrashing around. So we actually have something solid. So to that end, that's enough of an introduction. I'll get my shared notes, and not that. This. And inside shared notes, there's a section called Box and Tail. box and antenna, I think. This section is ball and tail, but yeah, there it is, lead and follow. So underneath ball and tail, there's lead and follow. There we go. Go to the lead and follow section, and there's an article right here, the Zen of lead and follow. We'll click on that. This is from Keith Lango, and he's an animator. You can see the date of this article is quite old, but it's amazingly relevant. It's really a testament to his writing and his knowledge of animation that what he's written is still relevant today. It's not outdated regardless of what software we're using or what medium we're using. His words are still quite useful. And so he has this kind of common language that he's using to speak to the everyday person, pedestrian person, and I really like that about his writing. And then he breaks it down into these sorta a fair analysis of what's going on in animation. So he says here, long ago, Walt Disney hired a renowned life drawing instructor named Donald Graham to come and teach his animators about life drawing and about capturing motion. One of the things that Mr. Graham said was that the animators should animate forces, not forms. Which all sounds fantastic. We all agree that wholeheartedly. One small problem is that we often don't have a stinking clue as to what he's talking about. At least I didn't for a long, long time. I agree with that. I think I was in my 10th year of teaching animation until it really started to click what this meant, and which was kind of weird because I'd used this article over and over again, and there's just something about doing it a lot that you think you understand it, and then you come back and you realize, oh, I didn't really understand it, but now I do understand it. And then that might happen again and again a few more times. So I totally get this. So he says, at least I didn't for a long time. He says, yeah, I mean, I agreed with it and it sounded right and it sounded real. But if you had asked me to break it down and define it for you, I had given you a stammering, useless reply. Sadly, this lack of understanding permeated my animation like the smell of a wet dog. You still like the dog, but not the smell. As time went by, I learned from other, more experienced animators what Mr. Graham was going on about when he said we should animate forces. And as we'll discover later, I then learned this essential ground rule of animation had been defined for us in detail on many occasions in the intervening decades, but the dots never connected, at least not in my mind. So what I hope to do here is maybe help a few more of us connect the dots to a complete picture. And so I share this article because it had this effect on me. It helped me to connect the dots, and it continues to do so. He approached it from an analytical perspective that was more familiar to me, more logical, more mathematical, and just trying to understand what it is that the artists are doing so easily. Not that I'm not a trained artist. I am a trained artist. I have a degree in that, and I teach in a section of the art department. It's just a lot of times I don't really feel like I am because I just think about it differently. So this really helped me. Maybe it will help you too. So as is my usual form, I figured, hey, if I struggled to understand this for a long time, I bet there's other folks who would love to have this explained as well. Okay, so he says he'll attempt to explain it. What is a force that we should animate it? Force, that doesn't make sense to me. What is a force that we should animate it? I never did like that question, the way he phrased it, but I kind of get what he means. Like, he's asking, what's a force? Like, and what is it? And how is it that we can animate that? Force is defined in the dictionary as the capacity to do work or cause physical change, energy, strength, or active power. Pretty cool. The second definition is also enlightening. Power made operative against resistance. Okay? Now, what does this mean to us as animators? Let's look at the first definition. A force is the thing that causes a physical change. Okay. Let me pause right there and say, I've learned a little bit since reading this last time. And I'll say, and I think you understand this picture, a force is like seeing the leaves blow around. You know the wind is there, even if you can't see the wind. I think you get that. So we know the leaves are being forced around. All right, but what does that mean to us as an animation? So a force is the thing that causes physical change. So we see the evidence. That's why I bring up the tree example. We see the evidence of the force in the leaves of the tree. We don't see the force, we see the evidence of the force. Okay, so in animation, this can be either an internally motivated force or an externally motivated force. An example of an internal force would be the hips shifting as a character begins to turn their body. An example of an external force would be someone grabbing a character by the shirt collar and pulling them. So this definition of force could be called a primary or initiating force. And since he said that, the example of someone grabbing and pulling, ask me to bring that up later about what's the difference between someone moving their own body towards me versus me grabbing the shirt and pulling their body to me. We'll talk about that later. There's a little bit of a subtle difference there. Actually, a very important subtle difference. Okay, so, but it would derail me, so let's just stay here. Initiating force, that internal or external source of energy which enacts a change of physical position and motion in the body of a character. Okay, what about the second definition? Power made operative against resistance. Here we see that there are forces that are seen only by their effect, just as I said, on resisting objects. So the question comes again, what does this mean for us as animators? Well, basically it means that we can see forces in a second-hand fashion by the force's effect against. I'm going to stop right there and say by the force's effect. He says against resistance. Okay, let's keep going. What kinds of resistance are there? All right. The primary types of resistance are inertia and momentum. What is inertia? Again, we turn to the dictionary. The tendency of a body to resist acceleration, the tendency of a body at rest to remain at rest. Resistance or disinclination to motion, action, or change. So inertia is the resistance to motion. Basically, we can call it the overarching desire to be still until forced to move. A kind of laziness of physics, if you will. The resistance of inertia is the resistance against getting going. Kind of like me in the morning and like me this morning. Okay, so that's funny, but back to the tendency of the body to resist acceleration, the tendency of a body to remain at rest, to remain at rest. The tendency of a body at rest to remain at rest. So let's think about that just for a moment, just briefly. What's missing in our animations up to this point? If an object at rest wants to remain at rest, what have we not given ourselves when starting the bouncing ball? Any idea? I can think of one thing.
Well, when you were talking about the first animation that I made about the first bouncing ball, you said something about it.
Like a true
having a life of
pause?
its own.
Yeah, Esteban, I think you're onto that. So, what if just for a moment, if the ball has a life of its own, what if just for a moment it, you know, lazily got itself going and then it went, right? In animation, there's a principle. It's called anticipation. We anticipate something's going to happen. You're setting up the audience that something's going to happen. But if I don't think about it as anticipation, and I think about it as everything at rest wants to remain at rest until something acts upon it, either an internal or an external force. So in the case of the bouncing ball, it could be that something comes along and hits the bouncing ball, making it bounce along. So we see the thing coming along that's going to hit the ball, and then the ball goes. So we anticipate that the ball is going to move once that thing hits it. Or in the case of the bouncing ball that can make itself move, which is in the ball and tail example that we're headed towards, it has a mind and power and strength and a will to get itself going. But it's kind of slow about it. It's like, I don't know if I want to get going today. And so it needs to kind of work itself up, and then it'll go. So what we're missing up to this point, what we're missing is anticipation when the ball gets going. We don't come out of being at rest. We simply instantaneously come out of being at rest. So the ball's at rest and then we instantaneously go. That's just unrealistic. Well, of course, unrealistic is fine in animation. It's just not as convincing. That's probably a better way of saying it. Anyway, so you could kind of swap the word anticipation, which is a principle, one of the 12 principles, anticipation. Swap that for these words, the tendency of a body at rest to remain at rest. That, at least that's one form of anticipation. I'll stop. I'll keep going here. Momentum. Impetus of a physical object in motion, or of a body in straight line motion to stay in motion in a straight line unless acted on by an outside force. That means that an object in motion will tend to want to continue in motion along the same direction until it has a reason not to.
Newton's first law of motion.
Right? So you're in space. Exactly. So you're in space, or we've seen space movies, and you're traveling at a certain velocity in a certain direction, and you can't change direction until something acts upon it. So what's the force acting upon us all the time? Which is?
Momentum.
Gravity is what I was thinking of, but momentum, I guess.
Well,
Gravity is
gravity,
what I'm pulling us.
I'm not entirely sure if gravity would be much of a factor.
Here on
Seeing
Earth?
as how in space.
Oh, in space, no. I'm saying here on Earth. Us here on Earth. What's the thing that we're always subjected to? Gravity. The resistance here is to try and stop motion. Try and stop something in motion and change its direction or stop its motion altogether. So the evidence of the second kind of force, other than the initiating force or the primary force, can be seen in how various objects resist the impact and effect of the initiating force. We call these evidentiary forces, secondary or reacting forces. So the reacting force, the evidence of the effects of inertia or momentum in the body as it reacts to the influence of the initiating force. So the leaves blowing in the wind. Okay. So I know this seems rather academic, but the value of the above definitions will help us to grasp the notion of forces and how they are seen in animation. To recap, we have initiating and reacting forces, if you prefer primary and secondary forces. An initiating force is the origin of the movement. For example, the hips turn and thrust. The reacting force is shown in how the rest of the body resists that motion. Example, the chest and head lag, the arms drag behind. As I was trying to describe earlier, the hip thrusts forward and, in a sense, the rest of the body catches up. So we should understand that these two forces make up a vast chunk of how we construct the motion we create in animation. For us to get any more understanding, we're going to need to look at a few examples. Okay, so then he gives you a couple of video examples, which these are animated in Maya, but they're flat and they'll serve our purposes here in 2D animation. He says in the first example, the initiating force comes from the moving of the box. The reacting secondary forces are seen in the lagging motion of the subsequent joints down the line. These little arms right here are called joints in Maya. These little bones, or this antenna. Each part is going to first resist movement until it can no longer do so. It will resist movement until it can no longer do so. This resistance is inertia. Then each part will follow its own momentum until it's forced to change that momentum. That change will come either by a change in direction in the primary force or by hitting its own motion range limits. Once that change of direction occurs, it takes a while for that change to affect the subsequent joints down the line due to their momentum. But they are eventually affected. The second example just shows that regardless of where the initiating force originates, the results play out the same. And I'm not sure if these movies still play. I guess they download. Oh, and in the shared notes, I got it for you right here. No, not that one. Not that one. Didn't I? I thought I did. Oh, it's right here. Duh. It's number... Of course, it's not in the right place because I'm not organized very well, but it's this one right here. Number 5. Download this video. Yeah, this one. There we go. And the second example of this was with the ball coming from the side hitting it. So, what we are going to do is, well, what you are going to do, you are going to read this article for yourself. There's some bits down here at the bottom about Maya type things, but that's not relevant to us. There's a couple of examples of the ball and tail, and an example of the guy jumping off the block, and a comparison between someone just jumping, which he said somewhere in here that it took him 20 minutes to create, I think. He said the first animation took 15 to 20 minutes, but the second animation took 2 to 3 hours. So I put these two together for you in the shared notes. It's this side-by-side comparison combined in TV Paint. If you can download that file and launch it in TV Paint, you can see this side-by-side. What he says is the forced jump and the using forces and the boring jump. So if we pay attention to the boring jump just for a moment, I'll just move this here so we just look at one. Pretty good jump, right? I mean, this really doesn't seem bad at all. In fact, a lot of animations just like this. And there's, in my estimation, good. But what he does is he tracks things like the head and the hands, and he exaggerates them dragging behind the power. Okay, so then we go back to this one. There's same time budget, exact same time budget, but they just feels stretchier, squishier. All right, so Now, we see some things if we go frame by frame in this version where he's, and I'll do the side by side so we can see the difference. So we have the head dipping way down, just nearly level with the hip, maybe even lower than the hip. The elbows coming, and the elbows and hands coming way up. Then he's has such extreme positions on the body that the body comes apart and breaks. See the arm breaking? The arm breaks on the character's right hand side, and then that right arm snaps. And his belly's way up in the air now. The head is still trying to look down because the head still hasn't caught up yet. And look at this snap from hips way up here to the toe touching the ground already. And the head's still catching up. The head still hasn't caught up. And the hands still haven't caught up. The head's still attempting to look down, and now the head's caught up, and now it's pointing downward completely. And he gives himself 2 frames for that head to settle into position. You see the hip is in position on this, and now the head comes into position. So why go through this extreme exaggeration? Well, first of all, as a teaching point, he's going through this extreme exaggeration to show and illustrate something following the leader, and how the follower always resists the leader. Or in the case of, like, we call them a parent-child relationship in 3D software, we call them parents and children, so the parent-child relationship. So the child is following along behind the parent, but resists where the parent wants to go and doesn't always catch up right away, but eventually will catch up in that parent-child relationship, or the follower catching up with the leader. Anyway, so what are we going to do? What are you going to do? So you're going to read that article for yourself. You're going to download this movie. So you're going to download this MP4. I wouldn't download his movie. I converted it for you to an MP4 so that it plays back in TV Paint. So download this MP4 from this number 5 right here. And then I'm going to show you guys how to import it and roto-track it, and show off a couple of features in TV Paint to make roto-tracking it easy. Any questions? Oh, here it is. There we go. Right, so the same file, project, a new clip. These are called clips. A new clip, and that could be just a little +1 icon there to make a new clip. Oh, you know what? Maybe I should say a word about this, just in case it throws you off. There's 2 words here, scene and clip. Clip is a single storyboard. Scene is when I link 2 of these together. So these 2, and you can see the linkage by the lack of this folded corner. So I could tear this off and now they're not connected. So this is a clip. And if I drag and drop this onto that one, that's a scene. And this row right here is, what is this row? Scenes. And this row is clip. So with a scene tied together like this, if I hit +1, I can add a clip in a scene. And if I hit the +1 here for scene, it adds a new scene, which is severed and not connected to the clip. of the previous scene. Does that make sense? It's just a different way of organizing it in terms of...
Oh, can you say it one more time, please?
I didn't hear you. Could you say it all over again?
Yeah. No, I heard you. You just asked if it was clear.
the-
and I'm like,
It's from the
"Can you do that
Lego.
one
It
more
was
time?"
from the Lego movie. Yeah, it sounds great. I didn't hear you. Could you say it all over again? I don't know. I don't know the exact quote, but it was from the Lego movie. Anyway, it sounded funnier in the movie. So this top row of buttons right here, this is the scene. The scene is a new folded, cornered thumbnail. If I, with this scene selected, if I click the row below it is the clip, because I kept saying the word clip and I wanted to make sure I was clear as to what I meant. Clip is another shot in the same scene. There, that's probably the cleanest way I can say it. And you can see they're tied together. It doesn't have the folded corner. It's for organizing shots in TV Paint according to the storyboard artist design. So storyboard artists would be using this a lot more heavily than we will. All right, so now that was all. That was all because when I right-clicked to delete it, I saw delete scene or delete clip. Well, if I have these two linked together and I choose delete scene, then both clips are deleted. Or if I delete this scene, all 3 clips are deleted. Just there, FYI. There, I'm done. All right. New clip. What is this one called? This one's called... There's a name for this. Sounds good. I didn't hear you. Can you say it all over again? Sorry. That's right here. Number 5. Box and antenna rotoscope. That one. Copy that. There we go. Number 5. All right. Then double click it. Go inside. Cool. Well, that's weird. Just jacked up my background color. What am I doing? And now the button is like missing. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. Found it. Okay, I'm gonna stop messing with that. Stop messing with this. White. I want a white background. That's all I want. White. Boom. There. No, that one. There we go. I was just going to drink this coffee and pretend that didn't happen. All right. It's all better now. All right. Import, which is open import. Import the movie. You know, the pigs in the DreamWorks film. Import the movie. Or what did they say? No, they said play the movie. Downloads, wave principle. Boom. Now, when you import something, take a moment and look at this window. Read it. It says where the file's from. It has something here that says preload. Checkmark that. If it's not turned on, checkmark preload. Now, let's have a commercial break explaining preload, shall we?
Okay.
Have you used Photoshop before?
Yes.
Mhm.
No.
I have. How's it class?
Never.
Yeah.
Most, okay. Have you used an image editing software before? Yes. So,
Yeah.
Yes.
yes. So when you load an image into an image editing software, most softwares, most of the time, when you import the image into the image editing software, the image is now embedded as a part of that file type. So if you hit Control S in Photoshop to save a PSD file, the image is now in, the image data is in the PSD file. That's not true in TV Paint. Sorry, Giona, I am going to server mute you. So that's not true in TV Paint. So in TV Paint, when you import something, you have an option to keep it external but reference it, or or make it a part of the file. Excuse me. Sorry. Or make it a part of the file, and that's preload. So preload is like importing an image into Photoshop and saving it to a Photoshop file. Okay, then you have right here, bring your eyes to the 4 tabs, project, clip, layer, custom brush. Anything that you bring in could be a brush or a layer or a clip, and we now know what a clip is, or the project, which basically means make a new project. I don't want to make a new project, I want a clip. And that's it, import it. And now this movie has been converted to frame-by-frame raster images, and it is a part of my TV Paint file. So when I hit Control S, everything is now in this file. All right, I'm going to right-click the magnifying lens and choose Fit All. We can see that we came up with about 71 frames. I'm going to rotoscope, rototrack, which is just a fancy way of saying trace this movie. The purpose behind tracing this movie is two things. One is to show you a couple of neat things in TV Paint. The second is to see frame by frame what the author, Keith Lango, meant by lead and follow. So we're going to look at what he meant frame by frame and study his examples. To start this, I'll make an animation layer and bring that thumbnail over here to frame 1. So I'm at frame 1, and I'm going to lock the video layer, lock it, that little icon. Then bring your eyes up to this ruler and compass. Click it. That brings out the guidelines. So the guidelines are things like the grid for snapping and snapping to circular shapes and so forth. They also have vanishing points, which is pretty cool, and then some other supporting information that you need when you're doing video work, such as safe area. And it allows you to snap to the safe area, which is pretty cool. All right, so I'm looking for something simple. I want a line angle, and it gives me this blue line, which is for some reason terribly difficult for you to see, but there's the blue, there we go. There's the blue line, and I'm gonna drop the blue line like anywhere and just click. Now, the blue line is at a weird angle, so I'm gonna set the rotation of this guideline to 0. So now it's level. And then I'm going to move its position on the y-axis by clicking and dragging on these arrows so that I can adjust the position of this blue line. Now, what this does is it sets me up to... Hey, Esteban, can you mute your mic? I hear all your clicks. Thank you. Awesome. So this allows me to snap to it. So I could draw. Let's get a pencil. And now when I draw, now when I'm drawing, wait, I got the wrong color. There we go. So now when I draw, it's always drawing a straight line, even if I'm not near the blue guideline. It's always drawing a straight line. So it's like a way of saying, if you always want this angle at all times, lay down the guideline and draw it. Now I'm going to see a whole bunch of you do warm-ups like this. Do this cheater move. Laying down a guideline. Like, look how parallel my lines are. They're perfect. I'm teasing. Of course you're not going to do this. But you could, if you needed absolutely parallel lines, this is what you would do. All right, so that's not quite what I want. So instead, I'm going to disable this targeting right here. So what that means is that I'm free to draw until I get near the line. And when I get near the line, you see it kind of sticks to the line when I get near it. That's what I want. It's kind of a neat aesthetic, isn't it? To be like partially low. It's like having a horizon line. Anyway. Pull back the art, you know? Stop having fun with art. That's really, it's not what we're here for, right?
True.
No fun. Anyway, so kind of where you think the center of the box is. All right, then bring your cursor up here somewhere. Where is that thing? The main panel. Look for the main panel, wherever you have it. The main panel. And as Caitlin discovered, I think it was Caitlin, discovered earlier today, yeah, that this is the rectangle tool. And the rectangle tool will draw according to the pencil that you have. So I'm going to draw a rectangle without the guideline. So I'm going to click the magnet right here, turn it off, trace my box. Okay, trace the box, done. Then introduce to you this cool thing. I love this tool. The reason to keep coming back to TV Paint is this one right here. It's called the cut brush. And the cut brush has four shapes: rectangle, polygon, freehand, magic wand. So I want the rectangle. The cut brush with the scissor icon. Again, that magnet is turned off. For the moment, it's turned off. Notice, before I do anything with the cut brush, notice here in the tool window, the cut brush is set to copy, smooth 0, anti-aliasing, optimize. Make sure optimize is checked when you use the cut brush. Okay? Draw a big fat marquee over your drawing. Bang. And now I have a snapshot of my rectangle. I'll press delete, backspace to delete. And now I have a new brush. It's totally cool. Now, just a commercial break about the custom brush. The custom brush is also animatable, meaning I could, and I'll demonstrate this later, I could cut out an animation over a period of time and have that animation play back as I brush, which is really cool. One of the, like I said, this is one of those tools that keeps me coming back to TV Paint. I'll never abandon this software because of these kinds of tools. In fact, as a side note, a side thought, it is. Amazing! As a side thought, just yesterday, I was talking with one of the short production teams who's decided to produce the opening shot of their short film in 3D, but then as a way to communicate being in a dream state, they've decided to create the rest of it in 2D. And I was encouraging them to use this custom brush feature to create a wheat field, like this broad, expansive wheat blowing in the wind field. And they're like, oh man, that's going to be a lot of drawing. I was like, actually, you could make maybe about 9 different clusters of grasses blowing in the wind, and then mix them in different ways to get a sense of the wind coming across it, and then reuse that as a custom brush and just make it as dynamic as you wish. There's a lot more to say about the custom brush later. I'm going to use it with the walking character to reuse walks. So like walks, runs, jumps, and other repeatable locomotion that you see in video games. So the custom brush really helps us do that stuff. Okay, so back on track. Commercial break over. So now what am I doing? Oh, turn the magnet back on. Boom. And notice that as I move my cursors close to the blue line, the box, boom, snaps. The box snaps to the blue line. So what am I trying to do? Well, the box is going side to side, side to side. So I just want to track that. I want to track where it is. So I'm going to, here at frame 1, click. And then I'm going to find the extreme position, which is about frame 12. Click. Find the next extreme position, about 31, 32, somewhere in there. About 32, click, and then about, I don't know, 40-ish, 43-ish, somewhere in there, click. Okay, there. Now I have the extreme positions of the box. And then just break it down. Just backspace, click, go to the next 2 frames, frame 5, backspace, and just keep doing that. And just tracing it out. Simple, simple, simple trace. Rotoscope, roto track. Keep those key positions. And be sure you hit backspace. I didn't do it that time. There we go. Easy to forget that. Boom. Boom. There it is. Almost there. I'm almost there. So much work. Okay, done. And then what we're going to do is click this button right here. You can't see
How
it.
do you copy the box?
Copy the box. It's the cut brush right here. That guy. Cut brush. Boom. Super awesome cut brush. Make sure in the toolbox that the optimize is turned on. Optimize is like trim in Photoshop. Do you guys use trim in Photoshop? How it trims all transparent pixels? That's what optimize does. Okay, so
I
back to my
can't find
brush.
it.
Main panel, this little guy that has all the big tools. This
What I
little
was
main
talking
panel has all
about I'm talking about the part where you said optimize.
when you click the scissor icon, that's in the tool menu, which is usually south of the main panel. It's usually just beneath unless you moved it around somewhere. I don't know. I've been moving my stuff everywhere. If you can't find it, go to your Windows menu here. It should be right here. Tools, Shift A. That's the shortcut.
All right, I found it.
Cool. All right. So then,
So-
as I was trying to say, this right here at the end of the timeline, click this little circle with the slash through it and choose hold. And now the box will be held for the remainder of the animation. Okay, I'll take questions. Go ahead.
I can't hold the box.
Can't hold the box?
Like
What do
I
you mean?
already traced out the box. I got the icons that you identified. I clicked optimize, but it's still not picking it up.
Okay, I'll do it again. I'll pop a new layer here. Hide this last one. Okay, so I draw my rectangle. My magnet is off. Turn the magnet off, and not the custom brush, but the pencil. There it is. There's my pencil with a rectangle shape. Yeah, there we go. And draw my penciled rectangle. Boom. Then get my scissor icon. Boom. Turn on optimize. Boom. And then draw a big fat rectangle over your rectangle, which is a marquee. Draw a big fat marquee over your rectangle. And now I have my new brush. Boom. And the better part is when we choose optimize, the pivot point of the rectangle is exactly at the center of the rectangle, which is very useful. Let me say just one more thing about the custom brush, and I think you might enjoy this for those of you who want to play, because I like to play in the sandbox of TV Paint. There's a button right here that says edit. So for the jackknife, which is my custom brush, edit. And now you have the ability to increase the size of the brush, decrease the size of the brush, invert or stretch, rotate the brush, mirror the brush, although it's already mirrored, mirror the brush, and rotate the brush. So you could change its pivot, which is up and down, no, left and right to change rotation. Yeah. Oh, and opacity map the brush. Right, so we could clip the opacity of it in the case of maybe something like, I don't know, trying to fade grasses, like long grasses faded into a cluster of short grasses or something. I don't know. I can't think of any particular reason why I would do this, but I kind of like that I have the option and the power to do it. Totally cool. And if you don't like any of those changes, just choose reset. Boom. What's this button do? I don't know what that button does. Oh, what is that? Remove brush opacity or replace with the B pen color. Oh, I didn't know that. Just figured that out. So the B pen color. B pen color is this color right here on the color wheel, just north of the color wheel. There's A color, color A, color B. So when it says A pen or a B pen, it's talking about this. This is A and this is B. So that's what that little help menu said. It said or replace with the B pen color. Remove it or add it. Remove it or add it. Totally cool. So B pen color, changed color. Orange. I now have an orange square. Although it's not very, it's not trimmed very nicely, but whatever. Options, right? Options. Sandbox. Play in the sandbox. You good, Esteban? Be rocking it over there?
Wait, I hate to jerk you around like this, but I still can't get it.
Okay, describe it to me again.
Like, I already traced out the box on a separate layer.
And then you get the scissor icon, the scissors.
You already clicked that, and I clicked optimize.
Awesome. Now click and drag a marquee over your drawing, and boom, you got a picture of it. No?
It's not working.
Ah. Anybody have any idea what's going on?
Are you like clicking and dragging like over, like covering the box? Or are you just clicking?
Good question.
When I'm just clicking and dragging.
Okay. We'll come back to you. And you'll have to go live for me and demonstrate this somehow. And then I know the answer when I see someone working. Generally. All right, so then I'll pop another layer, animation layer, boom. Give myself lots of frames all the way across, 71 frames of exposure, and begin the process of rotoscoping the tail.
I got it.
Now, perfect, good. So now I want you to rotoscope the antenna and specifically the extreme positions, the specifically when the child resists the parent. So so find those key drawings and draw those first, wherever they are. And I'll use my pencil. You can just, it doesn't have to be hyper precise. You could just scratch it. Get my there we go. There's my pencil. And I'll just start here with the very first frame. I don't need to see that. And just draw a straight line holding shift. Cheater. Okay, there. Cheater move. Okay, now find some key position where the child is breaking against it. So I think some of these are the extreme positions, like maybe frame 11. I'll choose the odd frames. And just track this sucker. Just track it. Just don't fret about it. Just something like that will be sufficient. You could be as detailed as you like about it, and then maybe find the next one, the child breaking against the parent. So somewhere in here, again, I'll choose the odd number. That's sufficient. So this is not supposed to be an exhaustive lesson, so you can cook right through it. And that's just to see how and I'm confident that this lesson is good for you. I've done this one many times, and I've seen the results of it where you begin to unconsciously understand what's happening with lead and follow, even if you don't, in your frontal, in the front of your mind, maybe you don't quite get it, but by exercising it and drawing over the master's work, I think we begin to sense how this works. In Richard Williams' text, there's on page 231, he talks about successive breaking of joints. That's terrible. I can't do that. It's called successive breaking of joints. Can't draw straight. There we go. And that's essentially the topic of lead and follow, the successive breaking of joints. But the reason I bring it up is that the antenna on here is what we will do with elbows and knees. We will break the elbows and break the knees of our characters so that we can emphasize the following of the character. And amazingly, even on a realistic character, even if we break the knee on a realistic character, for some reason it works. Visually, it makes sense. At 24 frames a second, it just makes sense. I'll show you guys that when we get to the walking characters, how we take a step every 17 frames. In our first lesson, we'll be animating on 4s, and it takes 17 frames to take a step forward. And between frame 13 and 17, there's this fairly large change of the foot being brought forward. Well, it just so happens that between frame 13 and 17, there's an opportunity in there to break the knee. And when you break the knee, even just a little bit, it makes the walk that much more convincing. Yeah, that's that background button down here, and you click that little thumbnail and then click a color. So I would first pick the color you like in the color wheel or wherever, find the color you want. so that the A pen color is, set, and then come over here, and then come over here and click background, click that little itsy bitsy square, you get a question mark icon, and then come up here and click the color you want to be your background. Does that work for you? How are we doing on time? Oh, we got time. Oh no, I'm drawing in white. Black. There we go. I was watching some videos on YouTube, which strangely has become a more recent habit. Not sure why. Why am I doing that? But I'm watching it, and I found this guy who's drawing on the subway. Maybe you've seen him. He's in New York City, and he's drawing at the subway, and he's drawing the people on the subway as figure studies. And then he turns around and he hands the drawing to them. He says, "Hey, I was drawing you. You can have it." He's probably making more money on his YouTube video than he would ever make trying to sell that drawing, so he just gives it away. And then there's the video evidence that he made it. There's the documentation that he made it when he hands it to them. I think it's a very cool artist.
Yeah, I noticed if you want to do art, you have to kind of do YouTube as well. You want to make money off it.
You know what? That's so true. There was a time before YouTube where you just, quite frankly, didn't make money. And now, with the web and all this media at your fingertips, you, an artist, can carve a path of really truly having a career, unlike any other time in human history ever before. You, an artist, can be exceedingly successful, both rich in art and in money with this media. Stunning, really. And the key to it, that I've come to understand, is the same key to success that's always been true for all of time, which is have good daily habits. Good daily working habits. You figure that out, and you're good to go.
What are your daily habits when it comes to art?
I teach, and I research. And then when I'm off semester, I try not to. I try to do things like help my wife, prepare something in our home, like a garden. So like we started gardening because it's the season to start it now. And quite frankly, I just want to get away from it. To be quite honest, I am inundated with a lot of other aspects, and I'm usually doing somebody else's work. I'm usually working on somebody else's idea. So I haven't made any art for myself or in my own free time in a long time. And that's just part of the duty of taking on a leadership position like I have in this job. It's just kind of comes with the territory of, I wasn't really aware of that when I started it, but it is the reality. So the shortest answer to your question is I don't make art. Not much anymore. Not my own anyway. It's usually someone else's. And wrong layer. And a lot of times I take quite a bit of enjoyment. Like last night, I was making some stuff. But it wasn't like for the purpose of making art. It was for the purpose of expressing a lesson so that others can be successful. So I was preparing to show some of this really cool stuff I want to show in 3D animations. I was prepping that, and I showed some of it in the Discord channel last night in the 3D animation class. So I was doing a little bit of that last night, and that was enjoyable to do that research. Once upon a time, I used to just sit and make characters in 3D software, and before that, long before that, over 20 years ago, I was making sculptures and just all the wackadoo stuff you don't understand, nobody understands. And even before that, I was learning to be a potter. Whoop, wrong layer again. Better lock that layer. Before that, I was learning to be a potter, and I made thousands of pots, and I made thousands of dollars when I was in undergraduate school. And then at some point, I made a decision to continue to work three-dimensionally, but not as a potter. And then I went to grad school for sculpture, and when I got to grad school, I hated it with a deep hatred. It's a couple of dark years, and I was under an immense pressure in grad school. I was far too young for it. I wasn't prepared for grad school. And it was one of those intense contemporary art programs that like expects everybody to show in New York City or something, and it was pretty intense. And then I survived it, but I survived it by hiding away. And in my hideaway, I was playing video games. And then a light bulb went off. This is about the year 2000. A light bulb went off for me, and I thought, well, couldn't I make digital stuff for my thesis? I mean, none of my professors were doing anything of the sort. And they had a lot of doubts. By the time I got to my thesis, my master's thesis, my professors straight up told me, you cannot show anything made on a computer. But that just goes to show how they lack diversity in their thinking. For such a diverse group of thinkers, they lacked it when they truly didn't know what they were looking at. And so I ended up spending, so what I did is I made two theses. I had two. One that they saw and gave me my diploma for, and one that they did not see. The one that I used to get the job that I have right now, where I then took advantage of the privilege of being in this position, and I researched the crap out of my animation and modeling, and I mean everything. I studied like crazy. I found lots of teachers all across California. Jason Schleifer, Jason Osipa, Adam Sale, Ian Waters more recently. They don't know that they're my teachers because we now live in the YouTube culture. But when you find a good teacher in the YouTube culture, or this, the Twitch culture, or the live broadcast culture, or whatever, you consider them your teachers. It's inevitable. And even though they don't know that I'm their student, and I learned a lot from them. So you can see what I'm doing now after hitting those key positions. I'm just doing a straight ahead run. Simple straight ahead run. Boom. Done. Hide the video and enjoy the show. Even with those few missing frames, it's still kind of nice looking. It has a nice poppy snappiness to it. I like it. Notice that the antenna slides it slides on the box when you don't have enough breakdown keyframes. So right in this area, you can see I'm missing a lot of frames. I'm not there yet, but you can notice in that area how the antenna slides. Because the box is animated cleanly, but right in here it's sliding. So if I just add a few more frames right here, that sliding will disappear. I also did work, a lot of drawings, a ton of drawings, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of drawings. One class in particular, undergraduate school, we made over 400 life drawings. We did one life-scale self-portrait, optionally nude. That was weird. And then we did weekly self-portraits at full-scale newspaper print pad. What was a newspaper print pad? It was like, those things are pretty big, 32 inches or something. So we had to do one full-scale scaled up, so like our head times 4. And the teacher was just encouraging us to look really, really hard at everything. Observe. My teacher for that class was a graduate of West Point. His undergraduate school was in West Point, so he was very militaristic in his approach, but he was kind, and I really enjoyed him. So he was very structured and very kind, and expected a lot, and he was high quality. He himself was a very successful gallery artist in New York City. Painter, Cuban American. His name was Alberto Rey. I still remember him. He was great. Okay. Yeah, and one of the advantages too to this digital format, to you being an artist and pairing it with being digital, is that you get this automatic documentation of everything you're doing. I was describing that artist in the subway station giving his life drawing to the person he was drawing. They don't know he's drawing them. He just surprises them with it. And it's the video that's the documentation that he did it. And so now he has this massive record of all of this art he's made. He makes his money on the YouTube video. The patron, even though they didn't know they were the patron gets the art for free, and he has the documentation that says he's the one that did it. And you don't want to miss that documentation step. That I made a lot of mistakes as a young artist not documenting what I did. There's a lot of art I made, hundreds of pieces of art that I made that are not documented, and so it's like it never happened. It's like it never happened. I don't know where they are. I don't know who bought them. I don't know where they are. It's just scattered into the... It's gone. And my professors at the time warned me that I'm not documenting well enough. Good job, Haley. That I'm not documenting. And I was like, my art's not that important. And now I reflect back on it, and I'm like, oh, they warned me that I was going to feel like this when I'm older. Of course, they were right. Okay, and that's it. That's this lesson. Get to work.
Yes, sir.
That's right. Give Haley a heart. Don't forget to save your work. Boom. There it is. Nice, easy assignment. Get that stuff into your brain. That's right, Neil. Good job. You finished it.
Excuse me, Mr.
Do you-
Stewart.
Do you have a gif of that one, Neil? Yeah, what's up?
Can we talk some more privately while people are warming up?
Yeah, absolutely. Jump into my office here. I'll flag you. Oh, you're already flagged. Go ahead and jump in the office. What's up, Giona? Are you out, Lena? You leaving?
Yeah, I've got Rachel's class at 1.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I'll record this.
Awesome. Thank you. I would rather stay here.
Okay, so I was modifying this scene a little, just making things a little more convenient, and so I'll talk about and show you each little thing that I changed so that you can understand what this is and make those changes yourself. It's nothing terribly difficult. You already know some of these things, if not all of these things. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to change is how I manage the items in the scene. Right now the ground is just a hack of 2 pieces, so I want to combine those 2 pieces together so that I can live model on top of them. To get that started, I'm going to trim off a bit of polygon here, grow my selection, which is just a shift greater than to grow the selection. Shift double click to get the polygon loop for those of you who maybe don't know. Shift greater than to grow the selection, and then just trim it and delete it, just delete key. So cut that off. I could take a little time to make this look nice or stitch it together, but I think that'll be sufficient. And something else I noticed in this old scene is that I use subdivision surfaces. So if you press number 1, you can see this is the actual geometry. Again, real hack-like of me back then, but let's just smooth that over a little bit with a simple modeling mesh smooth, and that helps to dull down some of those sharp points and make it look a lot more like it did when it was subdivision surfaces. So this is an actual polygon object. And then I want to take these two pieces and combine them together. So I'm going to take these two and go to Mesh, Combine. And that brings them together underneath the same pivot point. And you can see in my outliner I've got a new object sitting outside the group. So I'm going to hold Shift-Alt-D to delete the construction history. And again, just to remind you, that's under Edit, Delete by Type, History, Alt-Shift-D. So that gives me a cleaner ground object. And then it's no longer on the display layer. If I just hide my portrait here, it's no longer on the display layer, so I'll select the landscape, right click on the ground layer and choose Add Selected Objects. Okay, so now I have the ability to hide and show it, set it to reference, and for now I'm going to make it a live mesh. So to make it live, I'll select it and come up here to the magnet, and that sets it to a live mesh. And for those of you who don't know, live mesh means that anything that you move around in the scene, whether vertices or pivot points, it will stick to the surface. So what I intend to do is to draw a path. So I'm going to use the EP curve tool, which is on the curve surfaces shelf. And just a little bit up here, I'm going to click several points, go around the tree, come to the front of the door, and then stop at the front of the door there in front of the tower. So I'll just click, come around the tree, go over this hill, lots of little points around this hill, and then stop right here at the door or something like that. And you can see now that the curve has taken the shape loosely, but it has taken the shape of the ground. And so now my camera, I can control and it'll sort of track that as if I'm walking towards the tower. And that's pretty much it. And we can name this the path 1 for the lack of a better name. And then the bushes and trees are a bit separated, I think. There's a layer here for trees. You can see it's hiding the trees, but the little spherical bushes don't have a layer, so I'm going to add those bushes to the tree layer so I can hide and show the bushes and trees. And then the tower has its own display layer, the whole thing, but I would rather hide and show parts of it. So specifically, and I'll use the outliner to do this, take the outer wall and select it and press Ctrl H and hide it, and select the roof and hide it. And let's use the layer and hide the trees. So we're just looking at the stairwell. Now what I want to do is build a spiraling curve that goes up the stairwell. Again, use the EP curve tool. It's really the best for tracing. And we'll get into, actually let me just press Q and frame this up so that my camera is not all wonky. So I'll just tap F to frame up this object. Then get the EP curve tool. And I'll begin drawing the curve, snapping to vertices. So instead of holding down V, I'm just going to activate it up here at the status line. And now click the top inside corner of each step, producing a simple spiraling curve. Now, if there were a better way, an automated way to produce the spiraling curve, then I would do that. And I've tried other ways of doing it, but I find this one is the most successful. So just a couple clicks here and it'll be done. Maybe pitch the camera. And that's about it. Okay, so there's my spiraling curve. Done. And we'll call that path 2. Or path tower or something. Some cool name. Alright, that'll do. So how did you just pitch the pitch? This pitch? No, that's heading. Yeah, this is pitch. This is head. What do you mean? Oh, Alt B. Yeah, because I couldn't see the silhouette, so I just did that so I could see the silhouette. Right, so that gives me my 2 curves. Now, what I want to do is create a parent constraint to switch between the 2 curves. We want to move down one path and then switch to another path. Alright, so to practice that, I'm going to save this scene as my revision. And just load up a scratch scene to practice this and turn off the live mesh and turn off the vertex snapping. Okay, so let's just get 2 curves. One, 2. And then to set this up properly, we'll need 2. We'll use a locator so I can see it. 2 of these. 1, duplicate it. 2, so I've got 2 locators. The first locator, I'll constrain to the path, like so. The second locator constrained to that path. 1 camera, so I'll get the camera. And this time the camera will be, and I could layer this a number of different ways, but for now I think it would be okay to parent constrain directly to these things. So what I'm looking for is this constraint, parent constraint. Open the option box. And I want to select the drivers, 1, 2, and select driven, the camera, and then choose to apply. And let's not do, let's not maintain offset. Let me delete that constraint. Here's how you delete the constraint. It's underneath the camera. Select it, delete it. Okay, one more time. Locator, shift, hold shift, locator, hold shift, select the camera. Don't maintain offset, apply. There we go, that's what I wanted. So now the camera is halfway between the 2. Alright, what do we get? We get this parent constraint with these 2 parameters right here, locator 1, locator 2. And they're both set to 1, 1. So if I set locator 1 to 0, the camera jumps to locator 2 position. If I set this to 0, the camera goes back to its default position. If I set this to 1, the camera jumps to that position. So I've got 2 objects path constrained, and I've got a camera parent constrained with these 2 parents, and it's the blend is the animation effect of these 2. So if I blend this to be, less than 1, and I increase this to something greater than 1. Let's see, I gotta slow this down. And apparently this is just a 0, 1, 0, 1. I thought I could blend. It'll come back to me. But for our purposes, we're not, I guess for now, we're not blending from one to the next, although that's what I had intended to do. But we can shortcut this and say, well, we're going to jump from one curve to the next until I resolve whatever the blend is. Because I had it in my mind that as this number increases to a value of 1, that it would jump. But apparently... No. Oh, okay, nope, I got it right now. Okay, so this one has to be 1, and then this one is blending to a value of 1. So as this gets closer to a value of 1, we're coming to halfway, and then I'll bring this value down, right? And it should, whoop. There we go. There we go. There's the blend. Yeah. That makes sense. I thought it was strange. Where's the blend? So again, these are 1, 1, and then I can animate this one. Sorry, animate this one to lower, reducing it, bringing it closer to 0. Hold shift to go faster. And then if I bring this back to 1, a value of 1, it gives me 50% between the two positions. And then when I bring this one down, I'm saying don't go near this one, but go closer, go 100% to that one. There's the blend. There we go. So we can either jump cut it, as we just saw a moment ago, or key these values from 0 to 1 and 1 to 0 to blend it. There. And that's how we're going to jump from one curve to the next. Any questions? Okay. All right. So in this scene, camera, shot 1, and then a locator. We'll call this the outside path. That would be a more clear name. We'll call this outside path. We'll call this inside path. This is not the, this is the, motion constraint. Otherwise, that puts a number at the end of the name, and I'm using the same name, so that's not good. And then I don't want to call that a curve. Let's just call it a path. Okay, great. And then I'll duplicate this one. Oops. Get rid of this number. There we go. Outside path, inside path, shot one, outside path, motion constraint, and then inside path, motion constraint. Good. So inside to inside. Attach the motion path. There it is. Outside to outside, attach the motion path. There it is. And then I'll press Control A to open up the motion path properties for this one. Let's, for the moment, oh yeah, and also set up the parent constraint. So parent, 1, 2, holding control, hold control, add the shot camera, holding control in the outliner, holding shift if you're in the viewport, and then parent option box, do not maintain the offset, and hit apply. And then I want to look at the parent constraint here in the channel box. And I want the outside motion path set to 1 and the inside path set to 0. So I am completely on top of the outside motion path for now. Okay, good. So then I just need to deal with issues like targeting, orientation, and the other issues that we already outlined previously. So looking at the motion path for the outside path object, motion path tab in the attribute editor, we want to inverse the front, and we want the front axis to be Z, and the rotation to be object, the world up type to be object rotation up, and then define that object. So we can make any object for that. I'll make a cube, and it does sit at the world origin for now, and that's okay. Copy that name, go to the path constraint, paste that name, and there we go. Okay, and then I can layer in any other objects that I like. I could layer in another parent for the aim constraint. So I'll get, let's see, I'll take the you could have it visual as a locator, or we could just have it as a group, an invisible group. Either way will work just fine. I'll work with locators since we can see them. And this is going to be my shot one aim. Constraint. And then I'll need a target. So I'll do a Control D, duplicate that thing, and this is going to be the shot one aim target. Like that. And then I'll take the aim constraint and middle click, drag and drop it on top of my, let's see here, I'm missing something. What am I missing? Tell you what, guys, I'm going to keep this short. I'm going to cut it off right here, and we're going to pick it up right here the next time we meet. And I think I'll be in a better headspace, and I'll be ready for this. Does that sound fair?
Okay.
Sure thing. Take care of
Alright.
yourself first.
All
Let's
right,
do it.
cool.
Alright, what
I'll
did I
save
miss?
this. you can watch the record. I did record this,
Okay.
so we're good to
Are
go.
we just calling it a day?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'll see you guys. What's today? Thursday. I'll see you Tuesday or
Wednesday.
Monday.
Tuesday.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye, guys.